Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Mr. Strizack, I appreciate your courage in going public and putting out your name and everything. Why are you now doing that?
Well, it's mainly because I'm being contacted from so many different locations, so many different people locally. I've had calls from overseas, San Francisco. Basically, when you talk to a woman on a Monday and she's dead on Thursday, it's a little bit unnerving. And I think I feel sorry for her mother and her family.
Well, we appreciate your courage. Can you specifically and expand on it if you can, any details? When on Monday she told you she thought that there was a contract on her, thought she was being followed, specifically when and where, and what did she say? Please go back in your memory. Think as hard as you can.
Well, she was, I watched her in the morning after 9 a.m., go several times to a vehicle out in the parking lot, which was not her vehicle. It was a rental. And on her last bop down the stairs, I ran into her, and we started talking, and then we proceeded to walk outside, and we sat down on a bench, and she started telling me about why she was there and that she was going to her mother's, and things that had happened. She had gotten a lot of rest, she said, at the Park Lake Terrace, because simply we have a very high surveillance system in the building where we can watch what's going on, and she felt very safe. And then she proceeded to tell me about different times she'd be on the outer belts in Washington driving around, and cars would be following her, and she would then have to get off and lose them and get back on and continue on her ways. So she felt very safe here. We're a very, very safe building. And she was very happy for having the rest. But she told me about her probably going into jail and how she felt that they were down to about 6 years in negotiations on it, and that she worried for her mother. And she was going to try and talk her mother into moving into Park Lake Towers while she was in jail, and how she would take care of the association dues while she was in jail. And although they had been being paid from a bank through automatic depositing, I'm sure she wanted to make sure that the place was being kept up while her mother was living here. I don't know if she ever proceeded to tell her mother her wishes, but I know that's one thing she was very adamant about, was getting her mother to move here from Tarpon Springs. So
now,
one time during a... Go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to ask about the specifics of thinking a contract was out on her.
Well, she told me she feared for her life. And that's how we proceeded to talk about her being followed, about the safeness of the building here, so she didn't have to worry about that. And she didn't say contract out for her life. She just told me she feared for her life. So,
and that she thought that she was being followed.
Oh, yes, she said definitely.
Anything else that she said or any other details? It's so important.
She did talk about, who her true friends were, and how she thought some people were her friends and they were not. And I think she had a little bit of paranoia. I think she was very hesitant in making friends with anyone right now. I don't think she trusted anyone except her mother. I'm sure she really...
Well, I'm thinking about her being a very ladylike, very nice person, very, very meticulous about being clean and well-dressed. I don't think any woman would go murder herself, go kill herself at her mother's house, and as you said, do it in a dirty shed I mean, this stinks to high heaven. And she told others. She told me off air. I said, listen, you need to go on air and say you're never going to kill yourself. And she said, that's silly. I'll never do that. If I die, I was murdered. But then on air, she said, I'll never kill myself. But I mean, she told me she'd never kill herself. She told her family that. The news had said she was an only child. She did have a sister. Her sister said she never talked like that. Her mother said she was in a good mood despite everything, and was talking about an appeal, was talking about writing a book, was talking about how she was going to deal with prison. And then this guy pops up out of nowhere who helps cover stuff up on the Bobby Kennedy killing, who pops up as an apologist, just says, I don't have a tape of it, but she said she was going to kill herself. I want to bring Mike Rivero in here. Mike, do you have any questions for the building manager who was friends with Miss Palfrey?
Well, I don't have so many questions. I'm certainly glad that you have the courage to speak out and fill in some of the missing pieces here, because my first comment in listening to your description about her going around and making all these preparations and making sure things were going to be paid and the rest of it, these are inconsistent with the profile of somebody who is seriously considering ending her own life, because, there are behavior patterns that are associated with being a suicidal person, and this is inconsistent with it, and just the idea of taking a lot of her belongings to her mother, for a visit is also inconsistent. Why is she going to pack a suitcase if she knows she's not going to be needing all of that stuff? Of course, my question is, where did that box of papers go? But obviously that's down at the mother's right now, and you wouldn't know anything about it.
I also saw a report early on that the mother thought somebody had broken into her house, but now we never heard anything about that, and we can't get a hold of her.
Yeah, that's the inconsistencies here that I question, too. I would talk about every couple months to her. She would call and find out how things were doing here, whether she would be getting prepared to make a trip to Orlando, and she would tell me, I'm coming in on Friday. Is there going to be someone around because my car may need jumps, because her battery was going low quite a few times. So other than, just to talk to Jean all the time, you definitely would know she was not the type of person to take her life. Period. That's all. She just is not that type.
What was the last thing she said to you? When was the last time you saw her? What did she say?
That was a week ago, Monday. And she told me at that time she feared for her life, and that she was happy to spend the night at Park Lake Towers because she wasn't being watched.
Mike, this is amazing. You can say, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm fearing for my life. I feel safe here because of the surveillance security system. And then you magically kill yourself in a shed, and then a suicide note pops up, and somebody pops up to corroborate it who's been involved in all sorts of bizarre behavior.
Well, frankly, the instant Dan Moldea showed up to start talking about how he knew that she was going to kill herself, that to me was the absolute clincher that we're dealing with a cover-up here, because Dan and I went head-to-head back on the Vince Foster case. He even still has a web page at his website specifically targeting me for the issues I raised in the Vince Foster assassination. So any doubts I may have had that this was a murder vanished as soon as Dan showed up.
Whoever would have had anything to do with it was a very, very, very smart person, because my only question was, how did the police, even though I know they were there, they have these two letters, in fact I've got copies of them right now in front of me, how did they know it was a suicide? What made them say it was a suicide? Just because
they announced
looked like a suicide.
They announced within minutes
that
it was a suicide. Well, let me tell you how this works. She gets out of the car. It was like in a weird park by an industrial area by itself. You taser her, you take her in and hang her. That's their favorite way of doing it. Mike Rivera?
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many inconsistencies with this. I mean, first of all, the notes themselves talk about her being penniless and alone, and that is obviously inconsistent with the idea that she had a book deal, potentially a movie deal. The track record of Hollywood is they always make a big deal about these madams to the elite stories, like the Happy Hooker and the Mayflower Madam. They always get book deals in TV shows and movies. So the reality is, and Palfrey was smart enough to know this because she went to law school. She would go to prison for maybe 6 years. She'd come out of prison probably a lot richer than us regular working stiffs who are out here in the free world working 9 to 5. So this idea that she was going to be penniless was absolutely nonsense.
We also saw the over-the-top zealousness to say she would have spent 50 years. She was depressed. Her life was over. It's clearly suicide. And within 30 minutes of it being announced, this guy's already contacted us, and the article's already written. She told him she was going to do it. Ignore all these tapes and ignore her saying she was scared. She killed herself. Shut up. That's how it happened.
Jean Palfrey was a person with a sense of humor. And I wish I could find, I had a little Post-it note she sent me one time, and it was evidently it was somebody by Spencer's or one of the gift stores, 100 things to do with a dead cat. And one of the things in the upper left-hand corner, I remember looking at a cat that was hanging like it was strangled itself. And it says, just hanging around waiting for you. And she had just wrote me some little note on it, and I just took that as being very ironic that she would have used that so many years ago, and that's the way she died.
And that it was already a pre-made package of cat jokes. That happened to be the one that well, that's an omen.